everybody, and welcome back to the 13th episode of The Lab. Sitting with me here is Brandon Wierig and Alex Trotter, and we thank you guys for responding to our poll we put up earlier this week. I know we put up those 3 different topics. We're actually going to combine one of the 2 just because of the interest in some of them. So today we're going to be talking about the gas principle, and then had a little bit of an idea. We're actually going to bring up another one called the SED principle, which Brandon will elaborate a little bit further on that one, as well as the gas principle, too. He's just rearing ready to go.
Something like that.
But then when we get into the end of the gas principle, we'll also get in a little bit more towards, that central nervous system fatigue, and then also the overtraining aspect. But just to kind of lead it off, just so everyone's a little bit more familiar with it's general adaptation syndrome, which Brandon's going to break that down into 3 different segments here. And we'll kind of talk a little bit more at length with each one. But just to kind of start off, Brandon, why don't you just kind of go through those 3 stages of gas?
So the 3 stages, is there an alarm system or alarm stage, which is basically it's kind of anything new to the body. It's going to kind of be the flight or fight sense and the sympathetic nervous system. That's a big word.
I'm so proud of you. Man.
Spell it.
Yeah.
You can't spell sympathetic?
No.
Hard time pronouncing
I
that.
just don't believe it.
The next stage would be the resistance stage, which is kind of how the body's going to respond to it. And then the 3rd stage is the exhaustion stage, which is where the body kind of starts just really going downhill. And so we'll kind of break those each stages up a little bit. Like I said before, the flight or fight will kind of kick in with the body. Certain hormones will start kind of activating. The cortisol levels will start to be released into the bloodstream.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like if you think about like a straight line, you'll start at that straight line, and then every time you introduce something new into that, the line's going to dip a little bit until you kind of figure it out, which is kind of what the alarm stage is. And then as you go into the resistance stage, your levels of the body will kind of start to balance out, and then you'll actually kind of see your body go above that line, so you kind of start to almost adapt to that in a sense. You have like certain levels of like glucose levels remain high, the cortisone levels continue to circulate high through the body. Physiological functions kind of start to balance out, and then once you get to that exhaustion stage, that's where like the cortisone levels shoot up, the body's functions start to go down, stressors really start to hit the body hard, and that's when you kind of just start to fatigue out, and the body starts shutting down.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a quick
little synopsis.
Overview. Yeah.
I've always thought of like the first stage as being like 6 to 48 hours, kind of like that DOMS aspect of everything. You know, if you've never trained before and you go to do bench press for the first time, that next day you wake up, you might not feel too hateful, but that next day after, your body is like, oh my God, you can barely push yourself up out of bed. In terms of going into that, like you were saying, the resistance development, right? That's almost like your body's gotten used to the stimulus, but at the same time is still acquiring, basically learning how to adjust to that stress. And that stress itself isn't necessarily always just physical.
No.
Like you're saying. I mean, that can include maybe you worked out at the gym in the morning, then you had a full work day. So that stress level and that amount of stress also accumulates. So it's not just physical.
A lot of people don't realize that stress, the body kind of handles stress the same way. Like it doesn't really necessarily have to be like physical stress, mental stress. It still releases the same hormones and things like that. And it still takes the same toll on the body.
Yeah.
Stress is a stress.
Yeah.
Man, get you a philosophical degree.
I mean,
I like it.
we're putting a book together.
Stress is stress. I like it. Yeah. No, that's a great way to put it. So that's a little bit more about we could go way more in depth with the gas principle. Well, let's break it down now a little bit more, and let's go into the SED principle. So looking at that SED principle, that is going to be specific adaptation to impose demand. So when you're looking at that, you could look at that as more of like a specific physiological response in terms of what you're being exposed to. So like, I guess one example would be like where Trotter goes through 3-week waves, and he's going to have a specific movement for that week where his body is having to handle, let's say you're doing banded bench press. Mm-hmm. And then you're going through that for 3 weeks, and then you change that stimulus. Well, now you're adding to a different type of training. You want to add anything to that? Am I missing anything?
That pretty much covered. I mean, goes over everything. Like it can be
Mm-hmm.
either like endurance workouts, weightlifting workouts. I mean, it's not just a specific style of training. It literally covers like all whatever you want to get better at, or whatever kind of demands that your sport or just whatever your goals are. It's the same principle.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like geared to one style.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Well, eventually, I mean, you're going to adapt. If you keep doing the same thing over and over and over, then you're going to adapt to that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when all the kids go back to school, the very first week, they're yawning in class all day. You know, they're like hardly vocal. I mean, we can see it here because, you know, we'll get like a ton of them will drop off, you know, because they're just too dang tired.
Same thing whenever people like first start to work out.
Yeah.
You start seeing all these gains, like you start seeing all your weight loss, you start
The
seeing all
newbie
your
gains.
things, and all of a sudden when your body adapts to that stress,
Yeah.
I mean, it's your body figures out, okay, this is exactly what I need to do to maintain homeostasis, is which
Mhm.
the body wants to stay in at all times.
Ooh, another
And once
good
it
word.
figures that, hey,
I like
want
that
to-
word, man. He's got the big words today, folks.
did some doodling for you. No,
Yeah.
but same thing.
Morgan, how do you say this again?
she's got the higher degree than I do, but the
You,
same thing.
you is an educated man.
Yeah.
Okay, you is smart.
got some A's and B's.
J5.
But yeah, that's why progressions always need to be teetered into your programs, things like that, so you don't
Yeah.
plateau, I guess would be
Yeah.
an easy term for people to understand. So.
Yeah. So that would be like a good thing where like someone comes into you and they say, you know, I've been training for so many months, so many years, and I've never made any progressions. And then they bring out what they've been actually doing. And you see it's the 3 sets of 10 on every single movement. It's the same movements every single week. There's no change. There's no variability. There's no...
Same weight, same.
Exactly. There's no progressions. There's no changes. And so it's like, oh, well, we can make a few changes. And then you start making those little adjustments. You start, you know, the whole concept of periodization, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You start making those modifications, and it's like a whole new world for training. So let's go a little bit deeper then into that exhaustion phase, right? So let's say someone gets to that end point of their training, and they're going a little bit too long into that exhaustion phase, and we start to kind of see that, you know, gains, little plateau, a little shaky, and then everything kind of starts nosediving.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of like, I guess you could say central nervous system like fatigue, and then also overtraining. You were telling me before that you were gonna get on a few people. So I mean, we don't necessarily have to mention any names, but let's go a little bit. If someone spends too much time in that exhaustion phase, what are the detrimental effects?
I think overtraining is a term overused.
Yeah,
I would
There's
agree.
a very big difference between overtraining and overreaching.
Mm-hmm.
Which overreaching is actually like if you get to the elite lifters, the overreaching, which is your body's fatigued, it's sore, it's things like that. Like you push your body to a limit, but it's very easily fixed with a couple days rest. So it's like a couple hard workouts, your body's sore, fatigued. That's overreaching. People will say that they're overtraining when, let's be real, like you've never pushed. You have to go to serious levels to get to an overtraining stage.
Yeah.
Like I had some influencers like when I was kind of growing up to where like I've squatted like 700 days straight.
Yep.
I've lunged a half mile 150 days straight. Like never have I personally have never felt like I've ever been to an overtraining part of my, like I've never felt to that level.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we've all pushed our bodies to the limits.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally don't think I've ever been there. And I think it's kind of hard to explain because the definitions is like overtraining, like you're super fatigued, and Alex will go into the details of what he sees on, which I think are more of an overreaching style,
Yeah.
which obviously it's a really quick thing to adjust, but like
Yeah.
being mentally, like we have a lot of kids that are just mentally burnt out from their sport. Like you play soccer all year round, and that's all you do. Your
Mhm.
schedule stays the same. Like
It's hard.
you're mentally burned out, but you're not in an overtraining state of mind.
Yeah.
Which your cortisol levels are through the roof, and it's just, man, I'll let Alex kind of go on to like what some the signs that he may see, because I mean the west side it's pretty intense, and you might actually see some of that style of actual overtraining is at that state. But like a lot of these kids, they don't push themselves into. You're not overtrained. You're just severely under recovered.
Yeah. You're undersleeping, underhydrated, underfed.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
True.
But and that was like one of the things that some of like my training partners that were putting me through the tryout at the time. They had been around Westside for a long time. They had done incredible amounts of weight, incredible amounts of things. And, but like, I mean, Steph can attest to this. Like, I would get home and I would have to crawl up our stairs because I couldn't stand up. Like, it was painful. There was multiple ice baths a day. And I remember, like, the big thing that, like, Jake would always say, he was just like, you just have to find a way. And it was just like, what? But they were big believers on that too, that there was never like, we weren't necessarily overtraining. I was undertrained. So they were bringing me up to their level. And like, and I remember there was like multiple days in like, in that same week where I was physically unable to stop shaking. So like in my head, from everything that I've researched and read and blah, 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 like I'm taxed, like I'm tapped. But they were just like, no, you're not eating enough. And so, like, they would give me, like, random recipes to eat and, like, all this other stuff. And, like, that was the only thing that saved me. But, yeah, I mean, there was, like, we'd be, like, starting our warm-ups, and I'd start shaking or could, like, barely get, like, you know, to the box or whatever because I was so sore. But they, like, it was just, like, a mindset of, like, you truly don't understand what it's like to go past, like, your limits.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, like, some of the kids get, like, a little bit of taste with it. Because, like, we, like, you know, Brandon and I both, like, we have an eye of, like, okay, they can go a little bit more. There's a percentage that just, like, is untapped. Mm-hmm. You know, and they think it's, like, a punishment to them. But, like, you only know, like, how to work hard up until the point that, like, you've worked hard. You don't know what it's like to work hard at, like, my level or Brandon's level or, like, your level. Mm-hmm. So it's just, like, experiencing that and just, like, pulling that little bit, like, out of them. Yeah. Because then they'll, like, realize, like, oh, okay, like, I can take it a step further. Yeah. And then they, you know, they do that. And they kind of experience it. And because, like, I mean, we can sit here and talk to a microphone the whole time about how you're overtrained or undertrained and blah, 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 blah. But, like, you have to experience that for yourself.
Mm-hmm. It's just kind of getting to know your body, but at the same time, like, what is your own intrinsic motivation like to push beyond that level of discomfort?
Yeah. And like, and sorry, I cut you off, but like Lou would say all the time, like he would know within like the first like week whether these guys were going to stick around or not. And it's just because like, I don't know, like I remember like, I felt like I was like blacking out, like going in and out, like my hearing would shut off and I was like, what the fuck is going to happen? And then all you would hear is like, hey, you're up. And like, that's it. You got to go. I remember like being bent over in the bathroom, just puking my brains out and hearing like, you're up. And like, they would rip the door off the hinges and then just like, go.
Sounds like a nightmare, but also kind of fun.
Yeah. After it was over.
Did you always hit your like goals though for that? Like weight wise?
No, I got crushed. Like, I mean, I would hit it a little bit. Like the first day that I was there, I think I made it through 2 sets of the 5 squats. Like they had to peel it off of me.
Like let's talk about max outs.
Oh,
like if you had a month to hit like this deadlift PR, did you always hit that?
Yeah. Okay. So going into Westside, it was like 2 years and 9 months or something like that I had not pulled a deadlift PR, and that's training every week. And like 3 months there, I pulled a 30-pound PR.
See, that's the biggest thing. Whenever you go into like an actual overtraining syndrome, like you're not hitting anywhere close. Like your performance level is dropped so much, and you're talking not like a 2 or 3 day rest period. You're talking you got to go through deload weeks, you got to go complete rest. You're talking weeks, you're talking months of just completely tapping out. Like that's the only way you're going to get the body to recover. Like that's how like severe like your body is at in an overtraining state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But then you can also look at it as well, like people who don't necessarily have as much of an intrinsic like knowledge of what their body is like, and they are kind of learning in that. Mm-hmm. You also have to navigate it like murky water, because if you have that person who's not necessarily sure what their body's feeling like and how they should be recovering, then that's when you start seeing people who keep trying to push and push and push, and then they eventually come see me.
Yeah.
But except for you don't do that. You're okay.
Felt different.
But like I'm a big believer that like one of the greatest things I ever did was like hire a coach or go to a facility that has a coach.
Yep.
Because then, man, I forget which one it was. But they essentially broke it down that like you are treading like murky water or unterritory or whatever that
Uncharted waters.
uncharted water. There you go. You have a life vest that's attached to the boat.
Mhm.
That is your coach. They'll pull you in when you start getting a little too far out. You know what I'm saying? But it's like keep going because you truly don't know. Like you could be. I mean, you're treading water blindfolded essentially, and you're like you could be right there to that island, like that PR island. But then you start swimming the other way, you know. So it's like I don't know.
I just imagine you guys getting like a kiddie pool out over at No Name.
Yeah, ice buckets or ice baths.
Ice buckets.
Right, go ahead,
Yeah,
sit in that.
Yeah, but you're also talking about like you're competing with the best in the world,
Mhm.
which is way different than what I mean. We always push our athletes to the best of their ability, but when you're talking about competing at literally the highest level and the best of the world, like either keep up or get out, and that's Lou's philosophy.
Yeah,
So I mean, it's
yeah,
everybody's got a home at No Name Athletics. Everybody's going to have a home at No Name Athletics, no matter what your goals are, no matter what your level of competition is. But when you get to that style, it's
yeah.
if you're going to slow us down, then you're not meant to be here.
Yeah,
So there's a big
sure.
difference between
There is. That's
that.
yeah. That's a better way to put it too in terms of this. But to give like I was always like a chaser essentially, right? So like I wanted somebody in the gym to like go and try to beat and like chase and you have to find out for yourself, you know, in terms of like your sport or like lifting or what have you, if you're like a chaser or like you're the one doing like you're leading the way, you know, because like I mean Brandon, like he comes very close on variations to like beating me, and I'm like, oh god, like the no, like hold on,
Let me put you in the ground.
yeah. But then you know, there's it's just like a unspoken like competition, and like you know, we try to get our athletes to like think about that, like you know, weight room is not like a social group, it's like a game day or you know kind of thing, like you know, you can lock in for 1 hour and put your damn phone down and go to work, like you know, it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
I got on another tangent.
That's okay. I liked it. But then the one thing is also knowing how much volume, what's enough, what's not enough. I think when you're a younger athlete, you're not going to know.
No.
And like you're saying, that's why it's the role of the coach to do that.
Yeah, it's not your responsibility. It's not your job.
Yeah.
Like all of our programs that are out there, like all of your volume is built in. It's based on your percentages that you're hitting. So like, you know, we have athlete that's 8 years old. She does the same exact volume as our college athlete. It's just the weight's different and the progressions are the exact same. You know, so
makes sense.
The only difference is whenever I start, like if you look at it like as an athlete, you're gonna get sore. Like no,
Absolutely.
there's going to be a soreness.
Yep.
I love starting new athletes on an eccentric phase. I can figure out their movements. They can feel the pattern. The only down thing about eccentric is you're
you
going
are
to get
sore.
and that's part of it. I'm not, but when if you go into like the personal training style of it, I'm not going to start a new client on an eccentric phase because they're not going to want to come back. Like, let's just be real.
Yeah.
So there's definitely different ways to view that as a general pop versus an athlete too. So.
Sure.
But you want to understand that athlete as well. Like you want to know like how they're moving and why they're moving like that when they're sore. Because then that kind of gives you like a slight insight of, okay, this is, you know, let's talk about football player. This is a fourth quarter. This is what your body's doing. How much gas do you have in the tank? You know, kind of like you can monitor it from an outside perspective.
Makes sense.
But the tricky part is 300 shuttles ain't going to prove that.
No.
Stadium stairs ain't going to prove that. Like that's what people get confused is like the fourth quarter, like it's gut check time.
Yeah.
Like doing gassers ain't going to do it.
No.
Like how explosive can you be? I guess where the power endurance kind of kicks in.
Yeah.
Like one local guy around here was like he was saying like power under fatigue. That's not, that doesn't make any sense to me. At the same like
No, your force production should be almost the exact same, like off a little bit.
And that's when the more sport specific demands, which is what the said principle is. To where we're not doing exactly, you know, let's football example. We're not using like doing legit football movements.
Yep.
We're just using the same energy system required for that sport.
Yep.
Which is
You just said sport specific without like turning red.
Ugh,
Boiling
you
brown.
understand.
There's actually Haley was actually having a meeting with the Reds, and she wrote it on the board. It's like, we're not a fan of sports specific. We're a fan of sports specific movements.
Yeah.
And things like that, which is totally
She
different.
crushed that or like that quote.
Yeah, but
She
it makes
nailed
so
it.
much sense. But at the same time, it's like over here, like she works with baseball players all the time, so it makes it easier to be more in that sports specific thing. But if I work with a volleyball player, like a hard hitter, and a baseball player, like the movement's very.
And then you have a kid that's tapping you on the shoulder, and it's a wrestler. So then now you got to flip your mindset to that, and you're just like,
which is what's nice about
it is
the job, because it's not like
that private sector kind of thing. Yeah.
Section, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's like one of the things that I talked to AJ about, and then like I'm kind of playing around with it. Like one of the football kids, he's a running back or whatever, and I want to get it down to like where his force production is the exact same from his first hit to the last hit of the game. Because if you get smacked by that kid, and it's like a wake up call, like you get hit first play of the game, and you're just like, oh shit. And then you just know, like, that force production does not change for the rest of the game. So, like, that you just mentally beat that kid already. Like, he's going to ole you and try to smack your ankle, because he's going to make a business decision at that point. Like, that's a career decision to line up and meet you in the hole again. And, I mean, it's not a shot towards any of the other CFL players, but, like, AJ's prime example. He'll smack a dude's face mask through his teeth, and then you'll watch the guy sidestep, swipe feet.
Yeah. But that's, I mean, so kind of like what you're saying. So, like, power from quarter 1 to quarter 4, right? Now, you could also go into talking about, like we started in the very beginning, talking about stress is stress, right?
Yep.
So then you also got to look about what's happening outside the gym.
Yep.
School, homework. What do we know when kids are staying up till crack of dawn studying and trying to, cram in for a test or trying to get projects done? What happens to their sleep and what happens?
You can see it in their eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the big thing of that is like when it happens successively and it is continuously occurring, and that's when me personally, that's when I started seeing people like you're off today. You're not moving nearly. It's not as crisp. It's not as snappy.
Yep.
They don't have that same kind of explosion, and that's when you got to kind of take that step back. Because one, if you think about how your brain is, it's like any part of your body, right? You don't rest it. You don't give it its time to recover. That's when things can go awry. Because you got that one section of your brain, right? That motor cortex in there. You don't have that firing on all cylinders, and that's not providing that same stimulus. We got to go, 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 go. That's when you can kind of start seeing those breakdown in movements. Those maybe not so like, your positioning's off, not bad, but still at the same time. Or like what you talked about last time when you start seeing like, oh, you picked up 135 and you were like shaking like crazy. Maybe we do need to back off a little bit. Like, go home and rest. Like, at that point, that's when if you just keep, like, for example, I just had this happen maybe 2 weeks ago. I was just burying myself in the ground. I wasn't going to bed until like 2 a.m. And I'm an old man. I go to bed at like 8 p.m. And I got sick. Just putting myself in the ground. And that's something to be aware of because, like, I'm not even working out that hard. I mean, I picked up 225. I'm like, why does this feel like 500 pounds? My clean just felt slow. So that's always something to take in consideration as well. Like, you're talking about like overreaching, and that's a good thing. But then at the same time, how do you find that? Like, how have you guys gone about like finding that line with the athletes of how do you as a coach push them into the overreaching without then allowing them to go too far? And then they do end up with like, a little bit of a strain, or maybe they do end up getting sick, stuff like that.
A lot of it's, we'll have, most of our clients come in 2 to 3 days a week.
Yeah.
Which, and that's off season, to where they still have 4 days to
be a kid.
Yeah.
Could be a kid.
So it's not like they're coming in here like training like 5, 6 hard days a week. It's like they come in 3 hard days a week, and then we try to do our best to make sure they understand the recovery process and, proper nutrition and proper sleep. And even your client, 2 weeks ago, just come up and said, hey, I'm tired, I'm going to sleep in.
Yeah, she had a game the previous night, messaged me in the morning, and she was just like, I need a break. Like, I need sleep. I just said, okay. And she was, like, shocked by it. But it's like, no, dude, like, I want you to, like, start recognizing that and picking up on that. But I think, we've both done it to where, like, we're watching an athlete work out and it just looks like crap, you know, it's exam week, or you know there's like something going on with like, you know, their significant other, so it's like, what's going on? And just start communicating and be like, all right, move on. Go do this, and then you're done. You know, it's just, and then it's like having that athlete be able to trust you on that. Like, we have your best intention in mind, you know, and because I think a lot of the kids, they forget that, like, our goal is to make them good in high school, but our goal is to get them to college and then make them great and stand out in college as well. You know, like, and, you know, and then if they're like a borderline athlete, like, okay, let's get you good enough in high school to earn you a scholarship, because then we can progress it from there. You know, same thing. It's kind of just like we've been around enough or long enough to like understand where the trajectory of where you are today is where it's going to lead.
We've been through it too.
Yeah.
You prepare for tomorrow today.
Yeah. Yep.
You need to put that on a t-shirt though. Stress is stress. I like that actually a lot. Now guys, but thank you for joining us today. If you guys want us to elaborate a little bit more on any of those topics or either of those two principles, you know, let us know. Reach out in the comments, or just message one of us. It doesn't matter. But we hope you guys enjoyed today, and hope you guys learned a little something. But we will see you guys next time.